Welcome to the Engineering and Public Works Roadshow, a joint effort from the American Council of Engineering Companies, the American Public Works Association, the American Society of Civil Engineers. And we're coming to you today from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where we are actually at the first ever Great Trail State Conference, celebrating the Great Trail State of North Carolina. And we're talking about today one ambitious project and one project and a larger ambitious project, and that is the Mountain to Sea Trail Connector in Oak Ridge, North Carolina. And I am joined today by Mike Slusher with Davis-Martin-Powell, and also with Bill Bruce with the City of Oak Ridge. Thank you for taking some time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit about this project here, because it's a very interesting one. And what it means, of course, to the city of Oak Ridge. But Bill, I guess you want to start, like, what was the project inception, and then from the engineering perspective, how did the firm get engaged?
Sure. Town of Oak Ridge is right about in the middle of the state, and we're along the corridor of the statewide Mountains to Sea Trail. Our town council embraced the idea of bringing the trail through the town of Oak Ridge, not only as an amenity for the citizens of our town, but also as a way to bring people to Oak Ridge and showcase the town, what we have to offer, help the merchants of the town, tourism and so forth. So we had two great natural surface off-road trails, one in an open space preserve called the Cascades, another along the headwaters of the Haw River, which we call the Headwaters Trail. Problem was connecting those two real gems of our trail system. So there was about, I want to say about 2/3 of a mile section of rural roadway, high trafficked area, but rural. So we're talking ribbon pavement, there's no curb. So if folks are walking and trying to get between those two areas, they're walking on pretty much on the pavement.
Yeah, and that's not good. I mean, it's a public safety issue, but it's something we've heard a lot about in a lot of different projects. How you could have a small area have an outsized impact on really the trails. You have two disconnected trails, and it might be a small area that you got to connect, but doing that it just is huge.
That's right, and we struggled. We looked for off-road connections, but it was a fairly well-developed area, and we knew that we had to come down the roadway. The problem was we didn't want a typical sidewalk. This was a rural area. We wanted it to be consistent with the feel you had when you were on those natural surface trails. So when we hired Davis-Martin-Powell to help us sort of concept what type of surface and what type of facility would best match that environment, they brought a great idea to the table, which the town just ran with, and maybe I'll let Mike talk a little bit more about
what
that.
was your approach?
Sure. We had previously designed a large sidewalk for the town, more in the center of town at their larger park. So I think that's one reason they selected our firm for this. It was the success of that project. But we had to sort of scale our designers back from looking at this like a big sidewalk where you come in and grade and move utilities and do a lot of work to something as they envisioned, just a simple walking trail through a rural, lightly developed area. So we took the approach of, hey, we can move the trail around obstacles rather than going through them or moving the obstacles. And our challenges, like every construction project, was lots of underground utilities, power poles, and then we had to work with the homeowners along the route.
Yeah, I mean, the stakeholder engagement part of working with the homeowners, I mean, how was that to work with, and kind of, I guess, what was their reception to it? Because it was the possibility of bringing more traffic into the area, of course, but doing it in a specific way.
That was a challenge, and we were at a point where we were really building our trails program. So we wanted to be good neighbors. We wanted to accommodate concerns as often as we could. And so, we'd have homeowners say, hey, this is a line of trees that my granddad planted. Can we scale the project back in that area? And in those areas, we narrowed the pathway. Or there might have been other areas where a landowner was skeptical about public access in front of their property. And we did our best to sort of avoid those kind of impacts. So it was a very intensive public outreach period because we wanted to maintain that public confidence and be good neighbors.
It's a little challenge because as he mentioned, it was ribbon pavement with very little shoulder beside an open side ditch.
Yeah.
So we were in the yards in most of these places, or what people considered the yards. And we wanted to avoid all the mass grading and retaining walls and
Yeah, I could imagine, like, if you're a landowner and it hasn't been touched, you're in a fairly rural area, and then you hear projects coming in, and the first thing you think about are major excavations or alterations to the landscape. And being able to avoid that through, really looking at the problem and trying to solve it with input. I mean, that, it's successful, right? It comes down to you make all the parties as happy as humanly possible, right?
Yeah. So we were fortunate. We got a good contractor who understood the town's goals and was willing to work with the landowners. And they found out it was a lot different than a typical sidewalk because they had to do a lot of work digging by hand, carrying materials in by hand. We used pavers to create a border, and then some pea gravel to fit in with the natural environment for the walking service. So it took them a little longer, but they stuck with it and then did a good job and respected the homeowners.
And then at the end of the day, you're left with something which is going to stand the test of time, but actually fits into the natural environment.
That's right, and it's a consistent user experience. So you come out of the nature preserve and you're on a roadway, and you might expect to get on a sidewalk or a pavement type of surface, and here you are, you're still on a natural surface that's easy for the town to maintain, but kind of maintains that sense of being in the woods and going with the contour and being next to the trees and so forth.
And now with this connector, you're going to be able to have Oak Ridge part of that larger trail, that mountain to trail project, which you mentioned is a long-term project, but it's going to be about 1,200 miles worth of trail, taking you pretty much from the mountains to the ocean, which is essentially, I mean, that's huge.
That's right, and it's an incremental approach, and every connection like this that we get just adds a little bit more to the mileage of the off-road section of that trail.
It's just another example. I think largely what we talk about is just these small projects that have just a significant impact, and it does. I mean, to your point earlier, without these investments, without the engineering that goes into it, and the desire to do this, it really unlocks a lot of possible economic activity, investment, and a lot of people coming in, and it can change a community.
That's true, and we really took the tack very early on. One of the great pieces of advice that the Statewide Trail Association gave us was, you may be planning for the Mountains to Sea Trail, the statewide trail, but build those trails for your community. So with the help of Davis-Martin-Powell and being sensitive to the design and working with the neighbors, we know that most people on that trail are the people that live along it.
Absolutely.
And so they need to be the ones that are the good stewards and can take advantage of it.
Fantastic. Well, it's a great project, and I really appreciate you taking time to tell us a little bit more about it. And it's just another example. I'm really impressed by what the state's doing in general, just investing in these trails. It really does change the quality of life for people here, and it makes a really attractive place to be. So, Mike and Bill, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, this has been the Engineering and Public Works Roadshow, coming to you from Winston Salem, North Carolina. We'll see you next time.